If you're stressing about getting into the best Melbourne high school, let me ease the tension for you, because half the schools you think are elite might not even be. Let me explain. Hey there, if you're new around here, we're KISS, or Keep It Simple Academics, an Australian-based tutoring company that has now helped over 5,000 students make and keep learning simple but effective. Now, just because a school ranks number 1 or is in the top 10 or 20 doesn't automatically mean that it is the best school for you, because school rankings only tell you one thing, which is how well a school did based on Year 12 VCE exam performance. So those school rankings don't actually tell you if you will thrive there, if the culture is the right fit for you, or even if the 90-minute commute or the $40,000 in annual fees is even worth it. So if you're struggling to choose between selective, public, and private high schools in Melbourne, then this video is exactly for you, because we're going to be covering how to choose a school, what selective and non-selective public schools really offer, and lastly, what you're actually paying for with private education beyond the fancy facilities and the alumni network. But if you're already selecting potential Melbourne high schools purely based off VCE exam performance, then you're already doing it wrong. And so in this very first point, we're going to cover how to actually pick a school based on fit rather than reputation. So let's get into it. Alright, so the biggest mistake we see families make when it comes to selecting a high school isn't necessarily about choosing a bad school, but rather choosing a great school that isn't necessarily a good fit. So a few examples of this might be, parents spending $40,000 on private education for them to only realize their kid feels socially isolated in that environment, or students scraping into selective schools to then just burn out by year 10 because they were never intrinsically motivated. So here is a better way to evaluate what school is the right fit for you. So the first thing to consider is learning style. So if you find that you are a self-directed, quite competitive student, then maybe the selective school environment is the right fit for you. If you're someone that needs a little bit more support or encouragement, then it's better to look with schools with strong pastoral care systems. And if you're someone that's creative or non-traditional, then you need to make sure that the school actually provides diverse sets of programs to meet your needs. Now, with learning style ticked, next on the list would be logistics and location. So for example, a 90-minute commute to a better school might sound manageable in the short term, but by year 9, you're probably going to find it very exhausting and you might be resentful to even traveling to the school. Now, next on the list is school culture, which is something you cannot get at all from just school rankings. So you will actually have to go to open days or even talk to current students and parents of that school to better understand how the school handles things like mental health or academic pressure. And then the last factor to think about is your extracurricular activities. So for example, if you're someone that's passionate about music, you want to make sure that the school has a strong music program for you. Or if you're someone that loves STEM subjects, then there should be opportunities for competitions, clubs, or mentorship. Because the truth is, you will spend more time at school than anywhere else for the next 6 years. So you want to make sure that you actually belong in that environment. Okay, now let's get to talking about actual Melbourne schools. We'll start with public, non-selective, and selective high school. Now, just to clear any confusion, let's remind ourselves of the difference between the two. So you've got your standard public high schools, places like Baldwin High or Glen Waverley, where students are accepted based on local catchment zones. And so as long as you're within a catchment zone for any given school, you're guaranteed a spot within that school.
Oh my God! Wow!
Now, non-local students can also apply to catchment zone areas that they're not a part of. However, they won't be prioritized first and they will be evaluated on a different criteria. This criteria includes having things like siblings at the school, special needs, or specific interests and ability. And then you've got selective schools, places like Melbourne High, which will only accept students who pass the competitive selective entry exam and rank highly in the state. The exam tests things like reading comprehension, maths, writing, and abstract reasoning in order to filter out the most academically driven students for these types of schools. Now, whilst both selective and non-selective schools fall under the public category, they're actually quite different in terms of experience. So if you look at the student cohort within these selective schools, they're usually very high achieving. They're always learning at a faster rate than non-selective schools, and the majority of the environment is intensely focused on being academically driven. Now, non-selective high schools like Baldwin High or Glen Waverley still achieve incredible results. Median VC scores of about 35.
Damn!
well. And so the beauty of these schools is they accept students based on those catchment zones that we talked about earlier. And so what you end up getting is a very diverse set of students. So sure, you will have some high achievers, but you will also have kids with other different strengths, maybe creative, athletic, socially gifted. And so for some students, this is actually a much healthier environment compared to the academic competitive nature of selective high schools. And the other advantage of this is there is no stressful exam preparation for a selective entry test. As long as you're in the catchment zone, you almost have a guaranteed chance of getting in as long as you've got your application in early and spots have been filled out already. So whether you're looking to get into a selective or a non-selective public school, looking at the type of environment and the location matters a lot. And taking these factors into consideration earlier will save you a lot of trouble down the line. Now, finally, let's talk about private schools, because I feel like this is where a lot of students and parents get confused about educational value. Now, Melbourne's top private schools include places like Scotch College or Melbourne Grammar, who have consistently ranked in the top 20. But the real question is, what do you actually get for $25,000 to $40,000 per year in annual school fees that you wouldn't get at a top public school? Well, first of all, it's the facilities. So private schools have state-of-the-art sport complexes, performing arts centers, science labs, and even technology hubs that public schools simply can't match. So if you're someone that's passionate about rowing, theater, or robotics, it's likely that the private school environment will have the infrastructure to support those interests at a very high level. So the second thing is actually class sizes. So private schools tend to have smaller class sizes, which means that every student gets more individualized attention from the teacher. And so for some students, especially those who need extra support, this can make a huge difference to their learning experience. And the last thing that differentiates public and private schools is networks. Private schools tend to have great alumni networks, which can open doors into great opportunities such as law, finance, or even medicine. But something private schools cannot guarantee is better academic results. If you just take a look at the rankings, look at a school like Baldwin High, for example, a top public high school. They managed to achieve the same median VCE score as Wesley College. So if you're looking to attend a private school purely for academic outcomes, then I think you might be overpaying a little bit. I think if you're self-motivated, you thrive socially, and you live near a great public school, then you might not actually need to spend $200,000 over a 6-year period. So at the end of the day, every school on that top 25 list will give you access to excellent teachers, strong VCE preparation, and pathways to university. But the difference between a school ranked 5th and a school ranked 30th is marginal when it comes to long-term outcomes and success. If you want the full breakdown of Melbourne's top schools, including specific rankings, VCE scores, and tips for selective school entrance exams, I've linked the complete guide below, so go and access that in your own time. But hopefully you found this video informational and can help you better choose the right Melbourne high school for you. And I'll catch you in the next one.